I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. The save is getting close to 500 hours, and I now have a fully operational nuclear power plant. This takes in 1200 uranium and turns it into over 260,000 megawatts of power and generates zero waste. As much as I would love to start building these final space elevator factories, I need to build some more supporting factories first. The Superposition Oscillators are going to be the first of those factories I'm going to build. But before I get to that, I want to finally start using teleporters. I have been so excited to use these since 1.0 launched, and this is going to be my first time. Thankfully, there is still a lot of work to be done across the world before the end of this save, so I think I'll get good use out of them. This is going to be another long one, because before I can start making superposition oscillators, I'm going to need more plastic and rubber. Today, we're starting off back at the hub. I want to finally unlock these last couple things that I can. I have already unlocked everything in Tier 9. Only thing I have left is aeronautical engineering. The drones. So let's go ahead and knock this one out. There we go. Just needed to wait a minute for this to refill. Now I should have enough. Thought I needed 500. Wish I could read. I don't know if I'll actually be using drones in this save because they're still a little temperamental, but it'll be nice to have all of these milestones out of the way.
I have since removed those because I think no pioneer would ever misuse fix-it property right under their noses, especially since everything is recorded.
Never dream of it, Ada. So looking at the MAM, I could unlock these, and I could also unlock these, but I don't really want to spend the 100 power shards on this quite yet. I definitely do want to unlock these and have it available, but I'm not quite ready to sacrifice 100 power shards. Soon enough, I will unlock this and take care of that one. These, well, I'll probably still just leave those till last. I don't need them. And the alien power matrix. Definitely be unlocking these sooner than later. But same thing, I don't really want to spend the 100 power shards on them right now. So now I'm going to head downstairs to my train, and I'm going to head back out to the rocky desert. And I will see you when I get out there. And as the title kind of gives it away, the first project is going to be Teleportation. And this factory is the source of all of my Singularity Cells right now. My first thought was to have the teleportation hub at my hub and kind of the home factory, because that just kind of makes sense. But then that means I would have to transport all of these Singularity Cells, and realistically, what does it really matter where the hub is, where all my teleporters are going? Because the way I envision this happening is I'm going to have basically just right out here, I'm going to build a tower. I could build it at ground level, or not too far off to avoid these rocks. But I mean, it would be cool if I just had a view of everything, wouldn't it? So right here at the end, I'm going to elevate this to probably right above this roof. So I can see most of the desert at least. And if we head down all the way to the bottom here, I've got 30 Singularity Cells heading over to the power plant. But I'm making 50, and so right now I've got 20 being sunk. Under the Transportation tab, we've got our main portal and our satellite portal. So the thing with the portals are, as we can see here, wish I could manually scroll this, but it just scrolls automatically. But the way that it works is you need a main portal. Now the main portal needs to be fed 2 of those Singularity Cells per minute. Now it's going to start off by using, I think, more power. I think this is what it ends up using consistently, but I think it'll peak at like 1,000 on the startup or something like that. And then it'll just use 250 megawatts, which really, at this point, is a bargain for me. And this will need 2 Singularity Cells, so if I've got 20 left over, I can run 10 portals. And then once you have the main portal, then you go out somewhere in the world and you go and you set up your satellite portal. It does still need to be plugged in here in the back, but it just needs power. No Singularity Cells for the satellite. So my plan is, since I have all the Singularity Cells here, just make the home little hub here, and then I'm gonna have all of the different satellites throughout my world. And there's a huge bonus once I have all of these set up. But I'm gonna go ahead and get working on this first. I'm just going to zoop up a whole bunch until I get to a height that I like. Since I just need a lift to get up this high, it really doesn't matter too much how high I get. Although once you start getting too high, then all of the smoke starts disappearing and you start dealing with that other fog layer. So I don't want to deal with that. Probably somewhere around here. And I'm thinking since this doesn't actually have any factory part to it, it's pretty much all aesthetics. I am going to have to split up the Singularity Cells, but as long as I give myself enough space, that'll be easy enough. So I think what I'm going to do is make a circle. And for that, I'm going to go with kind of the basic standard one where you go out 5 in each direction. And then I like to delete all but one of them, because this one will kind of help me keep track of which direction. If my circle was twice as big and I zoop this out 10 in each direction, you would want to hold control and then rotate your mouse wheel 1 click, and that would be a 5-degree turn. And that would be good if I was going out the full 10. But as you can see, that pretty much goes to the halfway mark. So with this one, instead of 1, we're going to go 2. And then I'm going to go out 5. Well, I'm going to go out 6 on the first one. And then 5 from all the rest of these. And I'm just going to keep doing this all the way around until I've got myself a nice circle. Because I think that would be a fun way to place all of these portals. It's just kind of like along the edges of a big circular room. But this isn't the most exciting, and honestly, it's usually a bit of trial and error. Trying to get things in the right spot and make sure there's not too much weird overlapping and Z-fighting and whatnot. So let me just skip ahead a little bit. I now have the start of my little walkway, and underneath it is where the belt is going to go for the Singularity Cells. And then I'll put a lift in here, and it's going to go up to the platform. So I know I started with a circle, and then when I started trying to figure out how I was going to space out the actual portals, I decided it would be easier just to have, 3 foundations, I think it is, next to each other. So that way it was just a little bit easier. I could line up the portal right in the middle, and then there was a little bit more spacing, and I like the way that it turned out. And then the part that's facing the rest of the desert is just a big open piece. And so now this is what I've got going on so far. I was playing around with whether I wanted the regular walls or if I wanted the 1 meter walls. And I think the 1 meter walls are going to win. I just like the clean look as opposed to just all the extra that's on here. So I think I'm going to switch them all to 1 meter walls to go around. It costs 4 times the amount of materials, but it's really not too much, so I don't mind. And so this is how I'm going to have it laid out. The portal is going to be right in the middle of the 3 foundations. And then I just added a walkway. So I thought it would be nice to be up here and then be able to see past the portals a little bit easier. And just gives me a little bit better of a view of the rest of the desert. Down here is where I'm going to do all of my load balancing. Because I am going to have to take those 20 Singularity Cells and split them across the 10 portals. Thankfully, the way these are set up is the input is in the back, so I just have a floor hole here. I'm just going to drag this down. And then I've got plenty of room. I'll just have the 20 come up, split it in half, and then we do a 5-way split and another 5-way split. Easy peasy. The problem I've ran into now, I don't have enough superposition oscillators. That is what I'm going to be making by the end of the video, and then I'll have more than enough. But I really just want to play with the portals now, and I think it'll save me time in the long run whenever I have to run around and set up more trains. I don't have to take my train and go all the way across the map. I can just take portals. I just need to place a couple of the more advanced machines real quick. For a temporary setup, it's pretty quick and easy to throw together. We've just got the 1 quantum encoder, overclocked as much as I can with the 4 summer sloops in it. I only need 1 converter to produce the excited photonic matter, and then 2 particle accelerators, each one of them overclocked to 150% to get rid of the dark matter residue, and I'll turn them back into dark matter crystals. Now I just need to throw all the materials into some containers. This will give me enough to finish this project, and then by the end of the video, I'll have more than I can ever use. And I don't need to just sit around and wait. I've got plenty to do. Got a lot of these 1 meter walls to place. The temporary mess is all cleaned up. All that's left is my handy dandy trash can blueprint. So every once in a while, it's just nice to clear out your inventory of all the odds and ends. I've replaced that vertical stack of foundations with a whole bunch of windows, with the lift running up the middle. And then this is the design I went with to support it. So the lift is up the very center, and then it's just one foundation on each side. So if I zoop these down, and then from here, I just grab the pipe, put it in curve mode, and then I go basically 90 degrees around the circle, and then right in the middle of the next foundation. And then I grab the top one, and I just go all the way around. So you end up here, and then you just do the same one twice. And you just rinse and repeat, and you go all the way down. I went back and forth because, as you can see, it's not the smoothest of curves. If I actually did it, instead of doing one foundation drop, if I did it more like 1.5 or 2, it would probably be a bit smoother. And I could probably find just like that sweet spot where it didn't look quite as wavy. But here's my thinking, is since this is going to look like basically a giant spring holding this up, I think this is basically what it would look like if there was actually, you know, any load to it. So this way it looks like it's actually holding it up. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I've got a lot more walls around this tower now, and all 10 of the home portals are in. If we come down here, I've just got the simple blow balancing. So like I said, it just comes up through the middle and then splits in half. It each goes into a merger, and then the familiar 5-way split. And after a little bit more work, I have all the finishing touches, well, for now. Let me show you. From inside the Singularity Cell factory, we've got where they end up right here, and this is where I split off the 30 to go to the power plant, and the other 20 are going to go to this tower. So all I'm going to need to do is delete this belt, send it into that wall hole right there. They're going to travel along this little stretch right here, which is also my walkway to my teleporter tower. I added an elevator because of course I did. I love the elevators because, one, they're just convenient to use, and I just think they're the perfect solution to take power up. I don't have to have a cable stretch that whole way, the elevator does it for me. The downside to adding the elevator, originally I had the lift centered of the whole thing, and then I built the spiral around it. But then when I built the elevator, it was half a foundation over farther than it is right now. So it was just right next to all of the pipes. And when you looked at it from the side, it just looked really funny because it was so off-centered. I tried to ignore it, but it just looked wrong. So I just had to move everything over by half a foundation, redo the lift, but it's just the one thing. Really didn't take too long. The copper pipes just fit so well in the desert, so I went ahead and used those. I went with a really simple roof because unless I want to make it completely flat, it's kind of hard to bring together this odd shape. And here's the thing. This is actually building the teleporters earlier than I ever planned on, because I thought all of these Singularity Cells were all going to go to the power plant. So I actually have plans to make more Singularity Cells that were going to be for teleporters. So there is a chance that this is actually going to get even taller. I don't think I want to try to squeeze in any more on that floor. I think I would just add a second floor and add more teleporters or something like that. But I'm getting way ahead of myself here. I've got all 10 set up, and right now I just have this one. I went ahead and set up the home. I set up the portal over there just to kind of play with it. Now I've got 9 more to set up, although I don't think I actually have 9 places to set these up quite yet. I'm probably only going to do 8 in total, so 7 more. And then I'm probably going to add these signs. I really wish that they were a little bit bigger. Unfortunately, other signs just don't quite fit as well. Like the portrait looks a little bit funny, and you can't really fit the big ones on there, unfortunately. Maybe I just need to figure out a way to suspend it from the roof. That way it'd be a little bit easier to read. It's something I can play around with later. Let's get these set up. If we take a look at the map, what I am going to do is, let's open up the train stations. I've designed the world so my train stations are essentially the hubs of the area, and so I think those would be a really good place to start adding the portals. Now I'm going to head over and hop into my personal train station for what is possibly the last time in this save. I'm going to take a tour and start setting up these portals. First stop, the Rocky Desert. Now the satellite portal looks pretty good. It's a really cool building all by itself. And I could just place these in, strategic locations inside of all of these train stations, and I think it would be fine. Or I could make a blueprint. Thankfully, this is relatively simple. So I've just got my satellite portal in the middle. All of the satellite portals are all going to be going back to my teleporter central, and then from there I can go to any other satellite. And so then I just added some signs on the top to, help you find where the teleporter is. And then just clip some portrait signs together so you don't see the lines. And that way it looks like just one big long sign. And then just some quarter pipes and the outer corner quarter pipe. Wow, they picked a horrible name for those, didn't they? And the outer corner extensions. And yeah, so like I said, relatively simple. Just wanted it to have its own little housing. Add some fix-it orange and some more signs to kind of help it stand out a little bit. Now I'm going to go through each of the train stations and try to find a nice open spot. And I think our winner is right here. So this one, I think I'll have it face the sink right there because most of the factories are up on this hill. This is one place where I haven't actually built out the hypertube. I always had an idea of kind of wanting to make more or less like a loop with like the different junctions so you could branch off to whichever one you wanted to go to. I just haven't quite got around to it yet. But at least now I'm going to be able to get out to this area much faster. And now that I've got it placed, I just need to power it on. So with this one, I think we'll go up because I already have a bunch of things on the ceiling. And now it's powered on. The last thing I want to do is make sure that I start renaming these or else they're all going to be called Satellite Portal. We don't want that. This one will be the Rocky Desert, and I'll worry about syncing up which one to the satellites once I have them all placed and named. I think that'll be a little bit easier, and then that way I can go through each of the main portals. I can name it, add a sign at the same time. The next stop is going to be over at the West Coast, and it's the one place where I'm probably going to do a little bit more work. And then we're going to fast forward through placing the rest of those. Back to the plastic and rubber hub. For the teleporter, I am going to put it over here. I'm going to extend this walkway, and that way I can have access to my hypertubes, the elevator, all of that pretty easily. This has honestly been fine. The train station's kind of being out in the open. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But it does feel like it's missing a little bit something. A little unfinished, I guess. So I came up with this blueprint. Should be able to get it centered, over 2 foundations, so it'll have plenty of room on either side. But I think this is a good start. I've got some half foundations here, then the inverted quarter pipe, and then just the normal quarter pipe stacked on top of it. And since trying to get lights on a curve is not something I'm going to try to do, just left those parts open, and I still think it looks pretty good. And that's usually how my decorating goes. I'll design one piece that I kind of like and I think would be a good look, and then I just kind of build out from there and try to make it all work. I'm not going to completely finish this train station because I have a feeling it's still going to keep getting a little bit longer. Hopefully I don't need too many more train stations, but I'm definitely going to leave that back wall open because it's going to keep getting extended. Give me just a second and I'll show you how it comes out. Welcome back. The newly decorated West Coast train station. The train line got to stay the same. I didn't need to change any of this. When I first showed it off, I added the blueprint to the last foundation of the actual train station, but instead what I did is added a whole line of these quarter pipes around the edge to help give it a little bit more depth. And then I placed the arch on top of that. And then I created a new blueprint of just a bunch of the rounded concrete beams so that I could create a wall out of those. Is it the most efficient use of resources? No, definitely not. But I think it looks cool. And to fill in the gaps in between the train stations, I have a different blueprint that's just some windows, some fix-it walls, and then I just surrounded it with some beams. and added a few of the tiny 0.5 meter square signs. Kept it really basic for the roof with just some fix-it quarter pipes so I could paint in blue, and then just steel foundations, and then just some glass roofs. And the arch gave me, I think, a better place to put my radar tower, and so I really like it just being right here on the main entrance. And then on this side, it's pretty much just the walls of the rounded concrete beams and the windows. And on this side, I just have all the windows just lined up with the train stations. With this pattern and the blueprints, it'll be really easy to expand it for however many more train stations I need. We come in here and we've got our nice little waiting spot for all of these train stations. So they've got plenty of room. And I've got my teleporter here, and now I finally added an elevator so I can easily get down to the logistics area. And then I just extended the walkway to go up and over the train, and I've got plenty of room to add some more hypertubes. It's nothing too fancy, but I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. The rest of these, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot more work to the actual train stations, so we'll just kind of speed through this next part. That brings me pretty much back to where we started. Even though it's really not that far, the tower is a little bit of radiation from that train. Just right over there. I still felt that it would be nice just to be able to quickly take a teleporter from here to there. Even though that train runs constantly from this train station out to the Singularity Cells, I thought it would be nice to also just have a hypertube so I don't have to wait for the train. You can just jump in this. And then I have slots for 2 more hypertubes, although I don't know if I need to. I do have plans for 1 more factory out here. I'm not sure if I'm going to do 2. But it's always easier just to delete an extra one. So let's jump in the hypertube and make our way out to the new tower and get all the portals set up. Still need to make a walkway from here to there, but hey, at least you can do it in one jump. I've already set up my home one, and now we see both the map of all of my portals, pretty cool, and then you've got all of the unavailable ones. The one satellite portal that I've already linked, and then all of the home portals because those aren't satellites. I've got 7 more, so a total of 8. Right now, I'm just going to set up 8 portals, and then I'll just be syncing the extra, 4 Singularity Cells. It'll be really easy to split those off and put them in a merger, and that way everything can continue to flow. I might as well start with the one that's closest, and then I guess I'll probably just go clockwise. So we'll do the Dune Desert, and then it'll show you the cool little linking animation. Select link, and that's it. Now that both sides are linked, they both have power. All it needs is fuel. I'm going to go through the other 7, and then after I set up each one, I'm going to add a little display sign. It is just a little bit small, but for now, it'll be good enough. And we're back. I've got all of them linked. I've got signs on all of them. And turns out, if I restart the game after I notice that I'm losing frames, I get some of them back. So sorry if some of that was a little bit choppy. I'll have to remember to restart my game a little bit more often. The 8 brings us to the Desert Canyon / Titan Forest. That's my electronics factory. And that's the 8 that I have planned now. So the last 2 over here are most likely going to end up going to the grassy fields and the Spire Coast. Those are the 2 biomes that still have quite a few resources, and I don't have anything out there yet. So I'm sure it's just a matter of time before I expand out to those areas, and that's probably where those are going to go, and hopefully that's all I need. But for now, let's go ahead and go downstairs. Well, for right now, let's go into the logistics floor. So for these 2, I'm just going to go ahead and delete these belts. And thankfully, as long as I place this right in the middle here, I've got that extra walkway right in front of my elevator. And so if I line this up with the elevator, Obviously, I'm not crazy about the clipping, but this is temporary. Once I expanded those biomes and set up those teleporters, this just gets deleted. So for now, to keep this running, we'll just throw this down here, and it can continue to sync those 4. Now let's head back down to the bottom and get this thing started. Just need to delete this belt in the sink. Send them right in. Those are some cool animations. Great sound effects too. I've got 8 different portals. Well, let's go ahead and take the home one first, because that's the one I didn't show placing. Oh, that is so cool. And how fast is that? I decided to just extend my little walkway over here and just add some more glass foundations over where it was just kind of empty. I thought right over the waterfall was the best place to put a portal. This is the only one that isn't using the blueprint. I actually placed this one first. Then I went out to the rocky desert and made that blueprint and placed all the rest of them. This one I thought would be a little bit different because of, where it's going to go instead of inside a train station. But it spits me out just right behind my hub, and I've got access to everything else. Now it's never been easier to get back home. Now I can just jump back in. And now I can head all the way across the map. So if I wanted to, we could just go straight to the blue crater. And bam, just like that, I am all the way down in the blue crater. How cool is that? Oh, it's so fast. Oh, it's so convenient. And then from here, I can just run back inside and go anywhere else. Oh, I love this. I do think some better signs would definitely be useful. It's because they're all identical besides that sign. But other than that, I am super happy with this. I've got quite a few things to build, and I'm going to need to use trains for a whole lot of them, so this is going to be really nice. But I mentioned before that there is a huge hidden benefit to doing all of this. Let me show you. And that is that I've put all of these in train stations. Every single one of the train stations that has the asterisk on there was my personal train station. They have no freight platforms, no trains are set to go there. It was so that I could set it as a destination and then just sit back and enjoy the ride. So now in pretty much each one of those train hubs, I have one whole train station that's completely free and available right at the very front of it, which is going to be really convenient for a couple of them that I was starting to run out of space on. This one not as much, but there are a number where this is going to make a pretty nice improvement. And Ada should be happy. I won't be wasting time just sitting in a train. I can get from one side of the map and another in less than 10 seconds. The other reason I chose this train station to show that off is this is the location of the next project. The first plastic and rubber factory is being run off of one normal node. The second one is being run off of one pure node. I've still got this normal and this pure, and the resource well, but I'm going to save that one for later. For my third plastic and rubber factory, I'm going to be using both the pure and the normal for a total of 900 crude oil. I don't want to have to take them too far, so I'm thinking this little island right here, I'm just going to cover the entire thing. By the end of this factory, you'll probably have no idea that there is any land under there. This factory is going to use pretty much the same principles as both of the first two. As easy as it would be to use the exact same layout and blueprints and all of that and just build it 50% bigger, I do like to keep trying new things to, maybe I'll find something I like better. But it's using the exact same principles, concepts, recipes, all of that. So I'm going to try to make this not too drawn out and repetitive. Let me get the foundations placed and then we'll go through the blueprints. There aren't too many hills or anything, but I would like to build just on a flat surface. It's just a little bit easier, especially when you're dealing with pipes. But the main platform is raised up a little bit higher than it needs to be. And that's because I thought I would be able to fit most, if not all, of my water extractors underneath this area. So instead of making this just one gigantic rectangle, I just zooped down where there's land, and then that way I left all of the water free. So I left as much room as possible, and then at the end I'll work on adding some support so it's not looking too crazy hanging off there at the end. So this is basically the start, because I'm not sure if this is actually enough. I think I might need to go farther, and we'll play it by ear. But this is pretty much as far as I want to go this way. This way I still have a 1 foundation gap in between the 2 factories. Now for the blueprints. I bet most of you can guess what this is making. The good old tried and true combo of the heavy oil residue alternate. This will be taking in 56.25 crude oil, and that'll make 75 heavy oil residue. And then I'll get some polymer resin as a byproduct. I will have to make sure I deal with that stuff. That heavy oil residue will just come around here to the front. The blender is then going to be using the diluted fuel alternate. That needs the 75 heavy oil residue, so the exact amount. I need to add 150 water, and I'll get 150 fuel. I'm doing things a little bit different, as you can see. I decided to build it on an actual platform, so even though I laid out all of these, and these are blueprints, actually I think I'm going to end up probably replacing all of these. So in hindsight, maybe not the best idea to lay out all the foundations, but the nice thing is when I delete this, it goes back in my inventory, and then once I place it, even though these are only 1 meter foundations, they use up the exact same material. So I'm basically just swapping out a bunch of the 4 meters for 1 meters. Not the end of the world. And then again, on this side, I've decided to drop the fuel down. We're going to see how this works. Probably not the best idea. The better idea would be to go up instead of down. Feeding from below is not usually the best thing to do, but I have faith I can figure out how to make it work. On the underside, I just have this pipe so that I can have it do the blueprint auto connect with the next blueprint, which will intake that fuel, get split in between the 2. One refinery makes rubber, the other one makes plastic. And this is pretty much what dictated all of the rest of the clock speeds. I wanted to pair up one set of machines, so 1 plastic, 1 rubber pair, with the amount of fuel that it needed. And then that way I could keep everything in its own tiny little system as much as possible. This one needs 75 plastic, the other one needs 75 rubber. They each need 75 fuel, and then they'll make 150 rubber or plastic for the other one. So the fuel will get fed by below. This will require me to do a little bit of work, and I'll have to preload all of the plastic and rubber. But once it's up and running, then it's self-sustaining. The 150 rubber goes into a splitter, and then half of it goes and feeds the other machine, and then a mirrored setup on the other side. And then as far as the outputs go, I'll just have the plastic on the bottom and then the rubber on the top. I can also get a whole bunch of the wiring out of the way and just clip it through the floor. It's a lot less work if you include this in the blueprint, if this is the style you want to go for. Alright, so right here is my center. Just going to mark it temporarily. By laying out the blueprints in the way that I have, it means that I need a total of 16 of each. And they take up a decent amount of space, so doing them in just one long row is not going to be a good idea, I don't think. Instead, I'm going to split it in 2 halves. So I'm going to have all of the inputs come down here in the middle, which would just be the crude oil. And then the final products will come in from the edges, and then they'll meet up here, and then I'll figure out a way to get them over to the train station. And besides the crude oil, I also need a couple of refineries to take care of all that polymer resin. I doubt I need too much space, so I'm going to give myself at least 1 foundation here. And let's center this on the split of the foundation, so we'll put 1 half here, and the other half here. These are doing the residual rubber. I've got 600 polymer resin. Means I need exactly the 6 completely overclocked. Makes everything nice and easy. Each one needs a completely full Mark 1 pipe. And because all of the factory is going to be split in half, I can just have all of the polymer resin from this half go to this set of blueprints. And then all the polymer resin from the other half will feed these ones. Now let's start with the next one. We'll go ahead and remove these blueprints. But I do want a gap, so I'm going to go ahead and replace one foundation. I think I may end up moving these refineries back just so like all of the refineries end up being in a line. Yeah, so I'll probably need to move those just a few meters back just so they'll all line up. But yeah, I think I'll give myself just one more foundation of a gap here in the middle. Now that I've got a couple of those in, now you'll be able to see on this side, I just need to make sure that it's facing the right direction and then switch it to Blueprint Auto Connect, and that will auto connect this pipe right here. Click it twice. I'm good to go. So now I can just keep doing that all the way across. So that's the first 3. I just need 5 more on this side, and then I mirror it. So I have another 8 on this side. But you've seen this plenty. Let's skip ahead. And just like that, all of the machines, belts, and pipes are in place. On one side, I needed to rearrange the mergers because I forgot to make 2 copies of it, and whatever, that's fine. Not a hard thing to change. Each side will produce 600 plastic and 600 rubber. Those then come up here to the front. They merge up with the other half, so I'll have 600 and 600 getting brought together. So I should have a completely full Mark 6 belt of plastic and rubber, and then all of the residual rubber will be combined onto this merger, and that is an extra 300. Both of the oil extractors are in place, and I've got the pipes coming out from there all the way over. So even though one is normal and one is pure, I decided to make both of them Mark II because of the way I decided to do the pipes. So I'll be completely honest, I'm pretty sure this is a bad idea. And so part of me just wanted to prove that it's a bad idea. Each of these machines needs 56 1/4, which means if I take my 600 pipe, 56 1/4, that would feed 10 2/3 machines. And this is why I rarely do this setup this way, is because the initial amount is just messy. The pure node does 10 2/3 machines. The 300 pipe does 5 1/3. And I'm sure this is probably where some people would swear by valves, but I have just never had good luck with using valves. I could take, I think this one's the pure one. So if I went through the first 10, which would be this whole row, and then these 2, and then place a valve here and limit it to the excess amount, and then have the other one come the other way. And so that just this one machine was receiving just the amount that it should from either end. On paper, that sounds like that should work out. I've never had good luck with it, so I'm just not going to try. If it comes to the point where I need to start fiddling with valves, I probably end up just going with another solution that I feel much more confident about. So I want to try this out because this is basically the layout of how most people tell you to set up your very first coal extractors. This is just on a much bigger scale. For the coal generators and the water extractors, what people will do is you'll have 8 generators, which need a total of 360 water, which doesn't fit in one pipe. But if you feed it in from both ends and one from the middle, or combine 2 of them and plug them in on one side and then one from the other side, it'll all work. So this is kind of using that same exact principle, except for instead of 360 and Mark 1 pipes, I'm trying to split up the 900 crude oil across 16 blueprints. Like I said, I don't actually have super high confidence this is going to work, so I am going to stick around for a while and make sure. But before I do that, I've got 2 more things. I need to add my water extractors, and then do a little bit of decorating. Thankfully, the water will be pretty easy because, like we just went over, this will need 1 full 300 pipe, and then each blender needs 150 water. So for every 2 blenders, I need 1 full Mark 1 pipe, which is what I can get out of 1 fully overclocked water extractor. Let me add all those water extractors, and then I'm just going to do a touch of decorating. This is going to be one of those open air factories, even more so than this one. This one at least had a little bit of a roof. This one, I don't think I'm going to put a roof on. There's just so many smokestacks. I think it should be out in the open. Let me get to work, and then we'll go on a quick tour before we turn it on. Welcome back to the third plastic and rubber factory. Let me take you on a quick little tour. I added a hypertube with a junction, which, I'll be honest, if you're not on top of it, you could easily go to the wrong place because there isn't a whole lot of time that you have to click E and change directions. But I can now get from the train station out to plastic and rubber 2 or plastic and rubber 3 pretty easily. And then I still have one that takes me to the very first one, which is the source of all the plastic and rubber that feeds all of my dimensional depots. So that one is still arguably the most important one for me. Besides the fact that just about my whole world is interconnected, and if one factory dies, then eventually almost all of them die. But I like the all or nothing kind of method. It's all going to work or it's all going to crash. As far as the factory goes, only a few new additions. I of course made these a blueprint. Because the floodlight itself is so tall and I wanted that in the blueprint, I needed to make it 2 of them. And then I just used my same little buffer stop trick to give the base just a little bit more. And then if we come down here, we've got my water extractors. These are all completely overclocked to 300. And I was able to fit almost all of them in over here. If we come to this side of the factory down here, I can come through this little walkway that I've added, go underneath. So this is where we can see all of my wiring done, a bunch of the other pipe work, and then the last water extractor that didn't fit. I could have easily put all of them down under here, but I really like the way that they look sticking out in the front. So that's one of the new additions, is some stairs to go underneath. And then I decided to just put fencing all the way around the edge, and that way it still has a barrier and you can't accidentally fly off the edge. But they're basically clear, so it's kind of like a window and doesn't really obstruct any of the view. And I feel like the fencing is pretty fitting for an outdoor factory. The final products will all get grouped up to here, and then they drop down, and then they head along through the foundations. And then because the walkway of this factory is a line of glass foundations here, I decided to just run all of these belts just through all of these foundations. So I just faked a whole bunch of those wall holes, and they make their way all the way over to the train station. And that's pretty much it. I decided to keep it relatively simple. This isn't the main factory of this video, so let's go ahead and get this started. For the startup process, I'm just going to turn on both of the oil extractors. That will produce the heavy oil residue, and then the fuel, and the byproduct polymer resin. The polymer resin is going to get turned into rubber, and then for now I just have that going to go into a small storage container, and I'm going to use that rubber to start up the rest of the factory. And that way I can make sure that all of the fuel lines are completely backed up, and all of the pipes, because I have a feeling that this system, trying to feed it from both ends like this, is only going to work if the pipe is completely full. Let's go ahead and start with the farther one. Plastic and rubber plant number 3 is up and running. Well, sort of. As you can tell, I decided to cut out the whole startup process. Let me show you why. That yellow light right there. Oh, now turn back on. Yep, that one. So give the system long enough, took about probably 30 minutes, and it starts to run out of crude oil. So now this one is only running at 87%. It's already out of its buffer of heavy oil residue, which means it's only a matter of time until this buffer starts to slowly tick down, and then I'll run out of my fuel buffer, and then all of a sudden these two just won't be making the plastic and rubber anymore. Or at, like 85% or something. Whatever this ends up falling down to. Oh yeah, and the second refinery is now turning yellow. Oh, and a third one. So there are probably ways to fix this. Maybe some valves, maybe some buffers. I could probably do it a number of different ways. But I know one way that I can make this work really efficiently. You guessed it, packagers. Because I don't want to have to redesign just a ton of this thing, I am going to squeeze this underneath. If we go back downstairs, if I throw down a few more foundations down here, there should be plenty of space. Oh yeah, plenty of space. I'll be able to squeeze some packagers down here. That way I can leave all the pipes the same, and then I'll just have these pipes then come over and feed into a bunch of packagers. So let me show you that blueprint. These packagers are all completely overclocked, so each one takes in 75 crude oil and 75 empty canisters, 75 packaged oil gets output. So I have this set up for the 2 different nodes. Each packager needs 75, so the pure oil can run 8 packagers, whereas the normal node will run these 4. To squeeze everything in and get it nice and load balanced, I had to get a little bit creative here with the belting, but we've just got a more or less pretty normal setup. Because there's 6 on each side, I've got these 3 grouped, those 3 grouped, then they come into the middle, but then the middle one gets fed by this one that comes in on top. It all ended up fitting, so I'm happy. For the mergers, I figure I'll just place those, and that way I can just place them all in the right direction. And then up here, I'll probably take these out, and I'll figure out some way to create a walkway or something like that. Hopefully I'll have space. And then we're just going to tear up all of these pipes. And I'm going to have to figure out... Oh, so I need to get rid of all these railings too. I love the filter tool. If it wasn't for that, I would delete so many things I don't mean to. So if we look at these machines, each one needs 56 1/4 crude oil. So now what I'm going to do is have a packager, and I'm going to place it in the middle between 2 of these. And now we can throw 2 power shards in there. We'll just let the machine do the math. 26.52 or 25, there we go, times 2, 112.5. So I'll have 1 packager feed 2 of these refineries, and so for each row, I'll just need 4 packagers up here. And being able to do that load balancing is nice and easy and very reliable. So let me quickly redo everything, and then we'll take one last tour and get it turned on for real. Because this way is gonna work. Welcome to the new plastic and rubber factory, number 3. Take 2. Alright, let's run through these changes. Not too much has changed. So like I said, I paired up 2 refineries with 1 packager, and I have the junction right in the middle, so the lengths of everything should be the same. And then we've got 2 packagers here that are linked together with 1 splitter, and then 1 splitter here in the middle here. In total, I've got 8 packagers up here, and they are all coming from this very centerpiece. Let's just quickly go through the floor. So these are all being fed by this line, which is coming from this blueprint. So I lucked out and just enough space once I put the foundations in here, but I will take it. And then the empty canisters are being fed right here in the middle. And those are coming from right here. They're all getting grouped up right here. And then this will be my initial amount. I currently have a bunch of plastic and rubber already split up into 50s. So once the fuel is getting made, I can go through and I'm just going to drop a 1/4 of a stack into every single refinery. It only takes 4 stacks in total, which I can easily grab out of my dimensional depot. And so now this is what downstairs looks like. It's a little bit more busy. I think the oil extractors would probably have enough lift without these pumps, but I just left them in there just to make sure. So those can go up and over, and then they just feed down and then down into the packagers. I have high confidence in this system. The only thing I do need to make sure is to let all of these fuel lines completely back up, because since these are being fed from below, they really work best if they're completely full. Let's finally get this one started for real. And now that everything is backing up, I can go ahead and load up all of these. And just like that, it's getting, well, anywhere from 599 to 601, and then 150 on the other lines. That is an extra 1500 rubber and 1200 plastic. Maybe this is the last plastic and rubber factory I build. Even though it wasted a little bit of time and I kind of had a feeling it was going to, I think it was worth the little experiment to do with the two pipes kind of joining in together. Like I mentioned before, when most people get to coal power plants and they ask other people, what the best setup is, a lot of people will say the best setup is to do 8 coal power generators and then 3 water extractors. And then even though you only have Mark 1 pipes, as long as you feed it correctly from both ends, it'll still work. If you've seen any of my coal power generators, I never have that set up. To me, it is a way better thing, especially early on, to teach people that each of these needs 45. Each water extractor will output 120. Now, I could definitely be wrong, but by the time you unlock coal power generators, you should have been able to find 1 power slug and you should have the MAM unlocked. And I think you should be able to unlock the overclocking by then. But more importantly, the underclocking. I think it's a way better thing to teach people to just underclock a water extractor and just do 1 underpowered water extractor to 2 coal generators instead of trying to combine 8 of them together and fit 360 into 1 pipe. Because it may work in a small system like this, but if you scale it up and you try to apply that same principle later on in the game, there's a good chance it's not going to work nearly as well. Update 1.2 is around the corner, and they've hinted at fixing fluids, so maybe this entire rant is just going to be completely irrelevant in a few months. And that's honestly what I'm crossing my fingers for, because I think that would be best for everybody. I don't know how they're going to fix it, but I think we can all agree a couple changes wouldn't hurt. Just to double check everything, I came over to the train station and it looks like we're reading 1200 and then, well, 299 to 300, but I think that's because I put a Mark 6 belt when it really needs to be Mark 4. But everything is making it over to the train station and sinking. We are looking good. Now I definitely have enough for the next factory. After that, we're playing it by ear. Now I can start working on the Superposition Oscillators. And even though the Rocky Desert really isn't that far, might as well take my teleporter. Oh, teleporters, I love you. So now we just go to the Rocky Desert. And we're right back over here. Oh, I love those things. So here in the Rocky Desert, we've got most of them clustered just right here. And then we've got 2 more that are right here. But this last one, or at least this one, is going to go right up here. Unfortunately means I'm going to need to move some power towers around. But this is going to be the location for the new tower. And it is definitely going to be a tower. As much as I do really like these trees, unfortunately, they are in the way of progress. And there's still a bunch of other ones out in the world. It's not like I'm killing all of them. Just the ones on the top of this little hill. So let me clear this out, move some power towers around, and get some foundations placed, and we'll go over the plan. Now I have a whole bunch of foundations to work with. This factory is going to dwarf all of the others in the area. That's okay, we're at the end of the game. There's only so many more factories I need to build, and there's still tons of space in the world. Hopefully this is big enough. It's a 20 by 24 foundation base. But the train station is right over there, and I am going to need it, so you may be wondering why am I building it way over here and not, I don't know, down there closer to the train station. And I picked this location for a very specific reason. If we pull up the map and zoom in here on the Rocky Desert, there is the limestone node that you probably saw the foundations end right about here. So this platform pretty much covers the normal quartz node, a normal SAM node, and 2 pure quartz nodes. But if we look under here, there are no nodes, even though I did cover a lot of the ground. That's because if I ping it, that's still 110 away. Oh, and now it's behind me. That's because it's 100 meters below. This is the biggest cave in the game, I'm pretty sure, and there are a whole bunch of different entrances actually. Let me show you the first one I went through, which is probably the least used out of all of them. If we come to the very back of the tallest cliff in the world, there's an entrance. I'm just gonna speed past these hatchers. Come back for you, slug. And now we're out into a cave and we just need to hang a right. And here's the even bigger opening. Got lots of blue slugs and a whole bunch of nodes. And some little spiders to clean up. Gonna do my usual and get all of my miner housing set. And then I'm gonna do the same trick I did as last time. So I'm gonna place some foundations there. And then if I set a second group, I can delete, let's say, this middle one. And then what I'm gonna do is place some floor holes. Because the interesting thing about this cave is the cave itself is really tall. And so that may be at the right height, or it may be like 1 meter off. I think I might actually get lucky there. But regardless, that is the max height for the lift right there. So I'm going to need one to go down there, and then the other one, we're going to connect this way. And then let's go back out, but let me show you another entrance. So instead of going all the way out to the next cave over, you can actually go out right here. Oh, yep, here it is. There's just a tiny little entrance for that one. But if we come out a little bit, you can see we're just directly behind the factory. So instead of having to go all the way over there, it's a little bit closer. Just a little bit harder to find the actual entrance. Now over here, we can see my lift, and thankfully, the lift can extend all the way up to here. So I'm going to be able to bring up the 2 pure quartz, 1 normal, and I might as well turn that SAM into reanimated SAM and bring it up out of here at the same time. I don't need it in this factory, but it would just be easiest to bring it up here with the rest of them, and then I could just send it out to wherever it needs to go. And just like that, I've got all of the nodes brought up here. And I've got my second floor, because this first one is just going to be a logistics floor. I decided to give it enough space that I can fit an awesome sink down here. I think typically most logistics floors are really just there to kind of feed the machines that are right above them. But mine is going to take care of some extra load balancing, and I'll be able to throw a sink down here and get rid of my excess. Because I am going to be making extra of the superposition oscillators. They're going to go to my storage, but then I need a sink to make sure that the overflow gets taken care of so the factory continues to run smoothly. Now I've got plenty of space to work with down here. Even though, obviously, this is going to end up being covered, I decided to just wall off those lifts so I don't have to see them clipping through the ground. We just pretend it doesn't happen. But if we turn this way and we head out west, let me show you the other entrance that I typically use. Just need to drop down here, and normally this entrance is covered by a bunch of rocks. You just need some explosives to take care of those. And here's the cave. This is where all of the lifts are exiting. And I just kept it real basic. I wanted it nice and clean and simple, but I didn't really want to spend too much time in here because, let's be honest, once I'm done with this factory, I'm probably not going to come back down here. The 600 SAM is just going to go into 2 completely overclocked constructors. I'll turn the SAM into 150 reanimated SAM. Thankfully, all of the nodes are in this one cave, so I don't have to worry about trying to get any others out of here. Once these are up and running, I'm done. Well, I think I forgot a step, and I meant to go over the plan before I showed you this. So let's go back upstairs and let's go over that real quick. Here is the spreadsheet. Unfortunately, because one of the machines uses all 4 inputs and I have 2 outputs, it means I need to use all of the different columns, making everything kind of small. So I'll try to make sure I show a snapshot of each floor as we get to it. But in summary, the plan is to make 80 superposition oscillators. 6 of them are going to go to storage. Now, that is way more than I need. Honestly, even 1 a minute is more than I'm going to end up needing, because at most I just need a handful more to create a few more portals. Because I think for at least my build gun goes, I think that's all I can really use them for. But as you can see with all of the numbers, except for the quartz, just forget about the quartz. I love the pure quartz recipe, but I also absolutely hate it. But by making 80 superposition oscillators per minute, I get really nice even numbers to work with for everything. Everything except for the quartz is divisible by 10. This is great. Now to make the superposition oscillators, it's excited photonic matter, and that's the easiest thing to do. That's just turning power into this plasma gas thing. The alclad aluminum sheets are easy. I've got plenty of aluminum because I made an extra aluminum factory, and so now I can actually use it. So turning the ingots into the sheets only takes 1 machine. The bulk of this factory is going to be making the dark matter crystals and the crystal oscillators. And for those, I'm using the pink diamond, so I need the quartz crystal for that. And then obviously crystal oscillators needs quartz crystal as well. You may notice that one quartz crystal is highlighted in green, the other one isn't. And that's because I'm going to be bringing in 897 quartz crystal from the factory that's in the Eastern Dune Forest. I'm making a bunch of silica and caterium, but I'm also making quartz there, and I haven't used any of that. So I'll have a train that brings over the caterium ingots I need for the quick wire, and then a bunch of the quartz crystal, but I'm definitely not making enough. Bringing up all that quartz from the cave is going to be able to provide the rest of the quartz. And that's what this very first floor of the factory is going to do. I'm not going to use all 3,000 that's down in the cave. I'm going to use 2,961. Why that number? Because this is just an awful recipe to work with. For whatever reason, this one is 9 raw quartz and 5 water makes 7 quartz crystal. So unless I pick a number that's a multiple of 9 and 7, so essentially 63, I'm not going to be able to get even numbers. I could either pick the end number to be even, and then I get a crazy decimal for the input, or vice versa. So that is why I picked the numbers that I did. I probably could have found a number that would have squeezed out a little bit more of the rock quartz from the cave, and I would have gotten not too crazy of a decimal point, and I could have worked with it. But since I'm bringing in another source of quartz crystal to make up for it, it's just going to be so much easier if I'm dealing with whole numbers. I don't want to have a, 0.2 quartz crystal over at that other factory that then I'm going to have to deal with later. So that's the first floor. The second floor will make the AI limiters. Since this factory has such a big footprint, I should be able to fit all of those machines on one floor. And then the pink diamonds and time crystals, that is unfortunately going to use a ton of converters. And even though I would like them to all fit on one floor, it probably won't. Thankfully, the superposition oscillators output 2,000 dark matter residue per minute. I'm going to use the recipe that's most efficient for that residue to make the dark matter crystals. So the dark matter trap uses time crystals, and I'll be able to make 800 dark matter crystal, even though I only need 480 per minute. You can find a balance between all 3 different recipes to make this kind of net even if you wanted to. But I don't actually want to do that. I want as many dark matter crystals as I can get. So for now, I'm going to be sinking 320 per minute. But later on down the road, those are going to come in handy. Enough spreadsheets, let's build some machines. For this pure quartz crystal, normally I would need 43.86 refineries. I need 44. But with power shards, I'm going to bring that down to 20. And it's because that should give me the least awkward numbers to work with. So let's go ahead and place one machine, and let me show you. Pure quartz crystal, loaded up with power shards. I'll be making 2003 across 20 machines. So that means I need 115.15 and then 82.25 water. Not the greatest decimal points to work with, but definitely not the worst. Now, the reason I'm doing 20 is because these aren't the worst numbers to work with. If I did 2303 across, say, 18, because that would actually be an easier number to do the load balancing for, I end up with 0.5 for the raw quartz, but the water and the end product become numbers I'm not super crazy about, because I'm pretty sure that is 944 repeating. And this, I'm not sure, it's probably 3888 repeating. So to make sure I have the right amount of water, I don't really want the machines to have that. So that's why I'm going to stick with 20. I just think these numbers will be easier to work with. So let's go ahead and paint this purple. I'm going to use a whole bunch of blueprints for most of the factory. This part I'm not, and it's only because I've done it in the past for some of the bigger machines like refineries, and then especially like blenders and manufacturers and that sort of a thing. So for this, I would need a blueprint of 5, and since I can't fit 5 refineries even in the Mark III blueprinter, I have to split it in between 2. And sure, even with the blueprint auto connect, I could design it in a way that they would just auto connect and it wouldn't be too bad, but it's also just not really how I like to do it. I would much rather it just be an all-in-one blueprint. So I think I'm just going to stay away from those kind of more complicated ones, and we're just going to do it manually. And we'll do 10 on this side, and then we'll do 10 on this side, and if I give myself 3 foundations on both sides, that should be plenty of space. So right now my plan is to have the very outside foundation be the walkway. So if I can, I'm going to avoid placing anything there. So really, these are 2 foundations kind of in. And I'd much rather this be lined up on the foundation line. Just makes all the rest of the belt and pipe work a little bit easier. There's all 20 refineries. When it comes to the inputs for refineries, I tend to do the fluids on the bottom and then raise the solids because it's just easier to work with lifts and mergers and just not have to worry about head lift with the pipes, basically. But this time around, I think we're going to do things a little bit differently. This time I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to do the belting on the bottom, which is nice because I have to do this manually. So since I do like my symmetry, let me show you how I do one side, and then obviously I'm just going to mirror it on the other one. So with the 5-way split, one of them is going to feed 3 of them, and then the other one is going to feed 2, and the part that loops back. So the very outside ones are going to be the ones that do the loop back. These are going to go out to here, and that's going to feed those 2. These 3 are going to be fed by this splitter, and it's going to go on this half of this foundation. And then in the very middle one, so out of these 5, this is the middle one, going to line this one up right here, and that's going to feed both of those splitters, and then all I need is a merger. So with this, I like to work my way backwards. These need 148.05. So let's just do a Mark III into these first ones. And then the part that loops back to the merger. Each of these 2 splitters need 444.15. That's a Mark IV. And if we double that, that's going to be a Mark VI right there on this line. And then we do a mirror copy. So the first 3, it's going to be the up close one. Here is the middle splitter. And here is the outside one. Tie it all together, just the merger. The total amount of rock quartz I'm dealing with is 2,961. So I'm going to have to split this into 4 different systems. So each one of these groups of 5 are going to get 740 and a quarter. And so for this, I can just add some floor holes somewhere in the middle. Nice and symmetrical. So there's the first 10. And then I just need to do the same thing on this side. Now for the water. Each one of these machines needs 82.25. A fully overclocked water extractor can do 300. So since I don't really want to try to feed half of the machine or anything like that, the best I would realistically do would be 3 machines for every water extractor. So that means I would need 7, and then they wouldn't quite be even. But unfortunately, if I place 8, then that's still kind of hard to split up. And well, here's the other issue. I do have water right here, and you can place water extractors down here. Obviously, I've got some of the geysers down here, but I could find places for plenty of water extractors down here, right? But that would also mean that I would need to blow up a whole bunch of these, and I kind of like the way that they look. So instead of destroying this whole area, I think I'm going to leave it the way it is. Because if we just go a little bit farther, I essentially have an unlimited amount of water. So I think I'm just going to be able to do just foundations in a straight line and go all the way out here. And this is where I'm going to get my water from. And look, there is nothing wrong with pipes. Piping at that distance really isn't all that far, and it wouldn't be that bad, especially if you're going to limit it to the Mark 1 pipes. I've never really had an issue with that. This would definitely need one Mark 2 pump, maybe a second one. And I have high confidence I could get it to work. However, like I said, since I do like my symmetry, 7 water extractors would be the minimum, and I don't really like that. 8 I could do, and just some of the pipes would feed less machines. It really wouldn't be too bad. Or I'm running 10 pipes. Now we're getting to the point where, do I really want to run 10 pipes all that way? And as you can tell where I'm going with this, I don't really want to do that. What I think would be way cooler is 2 Mark 6 belts of bottled water going one way, and then 2 Mark 6 belts of empty canisters going the other way. So out here is going to be the water extractors and the packagers to package the bottled water. And then let's go ahead and put one right here, almost in the middle. We'll paint it blue. And this is going to unpackage the water. So from this point, I don't really mind doing 10 pipes. We'll do 82.25 times 2. Perfect, just one. So every one of these will just feed 2 machines. And I think that will be the easiest and cleanest way to do it. And then I just need 10 packagers. And then as far as the machines go, it's going to be pretty simple. So now what I can do is I'll just go out a couple, and then we go up 2. And then I can just nudge it to the point where now I get a nice little S bend. I'll do that on both of them. Change the color of all the pipes now. Easier on myself. And now I just grab the pipeline junction, and we'll get it right there in the middle. Page up twice. And now in straight mode, I can connect that. And now I just need to connect that. And so for every 2, so I'll have 5 pairs on this side. We'll go to the first 5 there, and then the other 5 will feed this side. And this way I'll have 2 belts because I need 1645, so it doesn't all fit on one belt. One belt will feed the first 5. The other belt will feed the other 5. This way I can keep it as 2 separate systems, and the empty canisters aren't going to get all mixed up. The 2 halves will stay separate. That'll probably make a little bit more sense when I set up the water extractors. But I'm going to keep working on this tower first, and then I'll do the water extractors. So let me do the basic belt and pipe work, and I'll add the next floor. Isn't all the symmetry beautiful? Missed coloring that one. There we go. Much better. So all of the pipe work was pretty easy, and then basically just did that same 5 or 10 way split multiple times, because then I just did the same thing over here with the packagers. And then all of the empty canisters are going to get grouped together in 2 belts. I'll probably change the color of these ones just because these ones are empty. These ones will have the actual water. This floor is done for now. So now we can move on to the next one. The end product is going to be the plastic AI limiters, although I'm also going to be making the aluminum sheets down here because I've got enough room to pretty much do all these assemblers. It's going to start with foundries. So I'll be using the copper alloy ingot to make the 740 copper ingots I need, and that is getting split between the aluminum sheets and the quick wire. All of the quick wire is then going to go to the plastic AI limiters, so I just need that quick wire and then some of the plastic that I just made, and I'll be bringing in by train. Alright, so we'll just go ahead and start in the middle, and it should be enough space. I think this side is going to be where I put the kind of item elevator that hangs out the side, and that's where I'll bring all of the items up and the final product all the way back down. So as long as I have enough room to get the other belts to go out where they need, because I'll need the aluminum ingots to go over to one set of assemblers, and then I'll need the plastic to go to the other one. I think right here is a good spot for the copper ingots. Already have the right recipe, probably not the right rate though. 740 across 4, so same amount of power shards, slightly underclocked from what they were. I mean, it's terrific. I already have all the right belts too. From here, I need to split the copper ingots into 2 directions. 240 are going to go to the aluminum sheets, and that's going to go to some assemblers I'm going to put on the right, and then the 500 are going to go to the left. Each one of these machines outputs 185, so I could combine everything and then just do a split from there, or I can actually just work with one machine. 185 isn't the best number, but it's not too bad. And here's the diagram I came up with to do this. So if I divide 185 by 5, I get 37. So all of the numbers that you see here You just multiply by 5. That'll be the correct amounts. Start with a merger, and then a line of 3 splitters. And then the merger and 2 splitter combo, or the good old 5-way split to end it. And then to get things grouped up, I'm just going to need 1 merger over here. And I'm going to give these plenty of space since I need to do some looping and whatnot. If I give it 2, that just gives it that extra little room I need. So we'll place 1 merger here and then 1 merger back here. We just need to multiply all the numbers by 5. So this is 185 into the merger. We're going to loop back 15. And so that 185 is going to become 200 here. There's 100 and 100. 50 and 50. 25, and then the 25 goes into the merger, and now we do a 5-way split. We're going to end up looping back 5, so that is going to become 30 right here. So there's 15. Let's see, there's 5, and there's 5. For this last 5-way split, we're going to use this end piece, and that's going to go back to this merger. So thankfully, we just need some short little lifts here. Delete the splitters, connect the lifts. Alright, and then the other part is the 15 that we need to loop back to the very beginning. This one, we'll just use a normal height lift. Put one there and there. And there we go. So now right here has 55. So if I take the 185 from this machine, here is the 240 I need. And if I group up everything else here, actually we're going to turn this one sideways. This merger is going to go this way, and then we can do this merger in line with that. 185 here, 185 there. Let's see, this is 125 plus 5. There's 130. So here is my 500. And not too bad. Now, because I can fit 5 assemblers in a blueprint, we'll go ahead and use this one. And then I just have a mirrored copy of it, so yeah, nice and symmetrical. There's my 10 assemblers that I need for the aluminum sheets, so let's set this recipe. 720 across, 10 machines. I can do that math. 72 for each one. And now on the other side of the floor, we'll place the rest of the assemblers. I finally combined my 2 blueprints because I was going to need to use this a couple times. So instead of just using the 2s over and over again, I finally made a 4 assembler blueprint. Actually, let's set the last one first. I may have to move these around slightly, but just make sure it has just enough space. Line it up right there. So the last ones are doing the AI limiters, and now I need 8 to do the quick wire. Put a little bit of space there. Yeah, should be good. And there's the last assemblers that I need. So the first row is going to be using the fused quick wire. I'll be making 1200 across the 8 machines, so 150 for each one, which is a really convenient number. Because now let's set the AI limiters. So this is doing the plastic AI limiter, and these are completely overclocked. So instead of 10 machines, I only need 4. Which means each one needs 300 cookwire and 70 plastic. So instead of load balancing this very bottom belt, we're just going to delete all of these. And now what I can do is just put a merger in between the 2 assemblers. And there's 150, there's 150, and there's my 300. So it makes the belting a little bit simpler in here. And I've already got, don't need that splitter. I just need to plug in 280 plastic into here, and that'll create my 80 AI limiters that I need for the next floor. You know the drill. Let me polish this up, I'll add the next floor, and then we'll make the crystal oscillators. I've got the simple belt work in, everything's color coordinated the way it should be, and I added some signs. What I should probably do is just add some throughput monitors right afterwards, because it's always nice to just double check right after you do the load balancing. Make sure that you did it right. The final products will end up on the outsides. This side will have the AI limiters, and then on the other side, I'll group up all of the aluminum sheets, and then those will come back this way. And this, like I said, is going to be where I have basically all the items go up or down. And that brings us to the next floor. Instead of over 42 manufacturers, I'm going to bring that down to only needing 18 because they're big machines and it's really useful to bring down that number. I'll need 800 quartz crystal, 560 rubber, and all 80 AI limiters that I'm making from the floor below. And that will make 80 crystal oscillators. Go ahead and extend these, makes it an easy way to know where the middle is. So to use up the space, instead of doing 2 rows, which I'm not actually sure would even fit, I'm going to split this up into groups of 3. So I'm going to do 1 row of 6, and then a middle row, and then one last one. It means I'm ultimately going to do them in sets of 3s, so I'm just going to use my 4 different blueprints I've got here to try to make things a little bit more symmetrical. So if I start with the side here on the left, to get the spacing right, yeah, this is how much of a gap I'm going to leave in between each one, because probably can't leave that much more. I'm going to place that one there just temporarily. Then I'm going to use my center one that has the splitters attached. This one we're going to nudge into place. And I think that should be enough of a gap. So that one goes there, and now I can replace this in the correct spot. With the beams, it makes it easy to make sure that they're lined up, and I know that the belt will be able to make that 90-degree turn. And then I switch to the other side, just has the lifts in the other order. Place that one there, and now this one. There's the first 6. Let's go ahead and paint these purple. Definitely using the alternate recipe. I'll be making 80 across 18 machines. So they'll each make 4.44 repeating. Normally, I really try to avoid these decimals, especially when they're repeating like this. But since I know everything fits on one incoming belt for each of the different parts, then I'm just splitting it into thirds and whatnot. So I have high confidence this will still work out even with these kind of decimals. And now I can see that everything, at least going straight into the machine, is just a Mark 1 belt. So that makes the very first part of the load balancing pretty easy. For whatever reason, I still haven't added these. I think for a bunch of them, it's because the very bottom level is usually coming from like a machine before. And so adding a couple extra splitters really hasn't bothered me. So I'm actually going to add the very bottom one, and then I can come through and delete the very top lift because we only need 3 inputs here. And now for these 3, just need a stack of 3 splitters in the middle. Now the quartz is going to need a Mark 3 belt, and it's the fastest one, so we'll put that on the bottom. Rubber's next, and still needs a Mark 3. And then the crystal oscillators just need Mark 1. So that right there is 1/3 of the machines. So I'm just going to add 2 more rows. And then what I'm going to do is in the very center, I think we'll do it on this side, I'll have a stack of 3 splitters, and that will feed the 3 different rows. And so all of the inputs are going to come in on this side, and then I can group up all of the mergers going this way. Skip the very first one. And so all of the inputs will end up going that way, which leaves this side open. And that way I can group up all of the mergers, and then one final one out here to group up the 3 different rows. And all of the crystal oscillators can make their way this way, and then make their way up to the final floor. Let me spam down a few more manufacturers and belts, and then we can get to the converters. I decided to just go with the most basic of belt work for right now. And I'm going to figure out where the inputs and the mergers go, just depending on where all the other belts kind of need to end up on this elevator, because going one way might be easier than the other. So it's easier just to wait until I'm actually figuring out where everything's going. And now I move on to diamonds and turning them into time crystals. So the reason I went with pink diamonds is because I'm building this right on top of all those quartz nodes. Originally, I was going to go with the easy way and just use the crude oil. But for the amount of diamonds I needed, I think I needed something like 4,000 crude oil. And that just seemed like a bit much. I really haven't used that much coal in the world, so I think it's about time I start using some of it. The pink diamonds recipe is great because it's actually very efficient as far as the coal goes. Quartz itself is kind of a valuable resource, so I think that's why people tend not to use this one and either go with the crude oil or the limestone, or the turbo diamonds is a really good one actually. But because of the location and the fact that I was already dealing with so much of the quartz, I figured pink diamonds just made sense. I'm gonna need 6,400 coal and 2,400 quartz. At least the quartz is a convenient number, It's 2 completely full Mark 6 belts. The coal, that's just a lot of coal. Normally, I would need about 54 converters for the diamond step, and then 67 converters for the time crystals. I've got plenty of power, so let's just overclock these to make it much more convenient, and I'm going to bring it down to 32 of each. So if I need 32 of each, normally what I would do is just put 32 of all the diamonds on the first floor, and then all 32 of the time crystals on the second floor. But since I'm dealing with so many resources, and like I said, the amount of quartz comes in on 2 Mark 6 belts, I could also split it so it's just 16 of each on 2 floors. Either option would work great, but I just figured it would be pretty easy to make this blueprint right here. And because of the amounts that I'm dealing with, it would probably be pretty easy to split all of the inputs across 2 different floors. Since I'm not actually going to have to use splitters, I'm just sending whole belts to different floors. I'm going to go ahead and give myself plenty of space. I really could have spaced this out probably a little bit more if I wanted to show it off, but I'm just going to have a row here and then another row here, and then we're going to go to the next floor and do the same thing because I should be able to fit, let's see, that would be 2 of each. And I forgot, placing 4 converters at a time is actually very expensive when it comes to radio control units and the SAM fluctuators. So while my dimensional depots are refilling, let me show you. The first converters are overclocked to produce 25 per minute. That way they need 200 coal and 75 quartz crystal. Really nice numbers to work with. And they'll produce 25 diamonds. That will go directly into this converter that'll take 25 diamonds and turn it into 12.5 time crystals. All of the numbers work out really nice, and it should be really easy to do all of the load balancing. And there we go. And now I'm just gonna have to wait a little bit longer for another one. So this is the unfortunate part, is I only have 1 dimensional depot for each of those parts. I'm only refilling at 240 per minute. So the radio control units, less than a minute, but I need so many for the SAM fluctuators, it takes almost 2 minutes for those. Well, it took a little while to be able to place all of these, but I've got the first floor done. So each of these rows has 1, 2, 3, 4 of the blueprints. So we've got 8 of each converter here, and then another 8 of each back there. But to help me do that, I decided to throw down another temporary setup. The funny thing about placing this many converters, I only have 1-dimensional storage, and it's sitting on top of just a normal storage container, which when I'm building any other factory is more than enough. But each converter to build one of these needs 50, which is 1 stack, and one of these only holds 24 stacks. So even after I waited a little while, soon enough I was down to only getting the, I think I'm making 2 radio control units per minute at that factory. So I needed a temporary setup to help make a few more. So I've got 2 of these, they're both overclocked and slooped, so now I'm making 25 a minute. So it is still going to take me a while before I can place all of them on this floor, but I still have quite a few machines to place. So that's the first problem I ran into. Radio control units just obviously didn't have enough. Didn't think far enough ahead. I should have had more storage and probably 2-dimensional depots feeding it. But like I said, building anything else, I have not come anywhere close to needing this many radio control units. And I don't think I will for any other factory in the future. So I don't really mind this as being my temporary band-aid. But that wasn't the only thing that I was running out of. The other one was the SAM fluctuators. Thankfully, down here, I happen to have a pretty easy source to get 150 reanimated SAM per minute. And hey look, one manufacturer completely overclocked needs exactly 150 reanimated SAM. I just need to feed it some wire and some steel pipes, and at least I can get another 50 SAM fluctuators per minute added to my stockpile. So now I just need to run down to the cave, and we're just going to temporarily power that one on. And I'll just need to connect the SAM to power, and that'll get this flowing. So then I can place another 32 converters on this floor. While I go back and forth between placing a blueprint, I don't want to just be waiting around, so we're going to go up to this floor. This floor is going to be making my dark matter crystals. I'm going to be using the dark matter trap because I want to make as many of the dark matter crystals as I can. Even though I only need 480, I can make 800 with this much residue, and I think those will come in handy down the line. instead of 13 1/3 particle accelerators, I'm just going to place 8. And since I've got so much room, and right here is the middle, I think I'm going to have the 400 come up here, and then we're going to split it, and we'll have 4 on this side, and then 4 on this side. Which means I'm probably going to have to put these fairly close together. Yeah, that looks good. And I think this right here is my middle marker, so I think this will work out. Perfect. The 4 just fit, and I've still got a little bit of space on either side. And then I'll have plenty of space down here in the middle. Just had to wait a second for all that quick wire to refill. And there's all 8 particle accelerators. And let's go ahead and load them up with power shards. And we are going to take, and actually I can do this math. Each one's going to make 100. I need 800 in total. Load balancing the solids is pretty straightforward. As far as the dark matter residue, well, that's going to be coming from the next floor. Yeah, I think a gap of 10 will be good for the particle accelerators. So let's build our next floor up here. And now we're up to the final floor. And this thing's getting pretty tall. This floor will be making the superposition oscillators. I'm going to overclock the quantum encoders to 200%, so instead of needing 16, I only need 8. For all the excited photonic matter, I would normally need 10 converters, and I could overclock those all the way down to needing only 4, and then pair up 1 converter with 2 quantum encoders. However, I think I've got enough space up here that I'm just going to do 8, so I can just pair up 1 converter to 1 quantum encoder. I want the outputs facing in, so on each side there's going to be 4. Everything is going to face kind of inwards, which I think will make a little bit more sense in just a second once I get these all laid out. So I'm going to give myself 2 foundations of space here and then just center it on these 3. And then I'm pretty sure if I just give myself 2 foundations to collect everything, that should be plenty. All right, so there's the first one. And to get the spacing right, I'm now going to switch to a converter. Because for every quantum encoder, I'm going to place 1 converter. And we'll just get the bulk of the machines all lined up. I think I placed all of these converters backwards. But these ones, the output needs to be facing towards the outside. What I should have done was set the recipe first, but that's okay, easy enough to copy and paste. Superposition oscillators, clocked to 200%. Each one will produce 10 and output 250 dark matter residue. And then each one of these machines needs 250 of the excited photonic matter. Now I just need a bunch of pipeline Mark 1s. Straight from the converter into the quantum encoder. I'll probably recolor those. And then as far as the outputs for these, like I said, I'm going to just group up all the superposition oscillators. There's going to be 10 of these machines in total. But for the residue, I'm just going to add a floor hole right in front of all of these. And since it's doing 250 per machine, I only need the Mark 1 pipes again. And now when I come back down to this floor, we can use good old horizontal to vertical. And let's see, will it stretch that far? No. So what we'll do is just go straight a bit here. So maybe I'll try to straighten things out just a little bit more. Maybe there's a way to get things lined up a little bit better, or I'll just have to have one little bend in it. We'll see. But that is how I'll get the dark matter residue from the final floor down to here. Now the issue with this setup is I need dark matter crystals to produce that dark matter residue so that it can create the dark matter crystals. To solve that problem, I am just going to pull out a whole bunch of dark matter crystals from my dimensional depot, and I'm probably just going to throw a whole stack in each one. Because once I'm done making those extra SAM fluctuators down there, so I place all my converters, I'm just going to turn it into making a few more dark matter crystals, and that way I can put a whole stack in each one of these quantum encoders. That way they have no problem starting, and they'll have enough of a buffer to start creating dark matter residue for these to create the crystals, and then the crystals make their way up and load balance across all 8 machines. Once the system is up and running, I'll have a surplus of 320 a minute, so I won't ever have to worry about doing this sort of a setup again, because I'll just always have a ton of extra laying around. The rest of this is pretty easy. It's just going to be load balancing the solids across 8 machines, which you've seen me do a whole bunch of times. So let's just skip ahead a little bit. Now I have 2 full floors of converters and all of my particle accelerators with the little bit of butt work that it needed. Got all my pipes in there, and I did move things around so that I could get a straight pipe instead of having that little wiggle at the top. And then if we come up to the top floor, now all the basic belt work for this is done too. The 720 aluminum sheets will get plugged in on the bottom, the 480 dark matter crystals in the middle, and then the whopping 80 crystal oscillators plug in at the top. Then there's just a whole line of mergers to collect all the superposition oscillators, and then those will go up and over everything else, and then they will probably be the very back thing so that I can kind of show it off, right? It's got to be the very final product. They'll go up and over and then just go all the way down to that basement floor. Then they'll make their way to the train station, I'm sure, because eventually I'm going to have to send those somewhere. These aren't all for storage, that's for sure. Now that I've got all of these machines in and just the basic belt work, I'm still going to need to figure out how to get things from one floor to the next and whatnot. But there are still a few more machines I need to place. The part I want to work on next is going to be right out here. Now, normally I try not to do this because, well, this is elevated quite a bit off the ground and I don't want to have just crazy floating bridges in places. But this also just felt like it would be the easiest way to get all the way out here and then straight down. I definitely could have worked with the terrain a little bit more and stuck to the ground and just kind of gone down and then up the cliff to go up to the factory. But this is going to need at least 4 belts. It's going to have 2 belts of the packaged water and 2 belts of the empty canisters. We're going to come all the way out here and then drop down. And I think this should be about as much space as I need. Thankfully, the packages aren't too big, and the final row of them doesn't really need that much space. It ended up being easiest just to place 8 water extractors and then pair up 2 packagers for each one of those. Each water extractor is clocked to this awful speed, but 205.63. That goes into 2 packagers, and each one of these are clocked to these awful numbers. I believe the game will actually save 4 decimal points, even though it may not display it in all the screens. So this is the actual number that each one is doing, and that should be fine. And same with the water extractors. They're actually at 205.625. The thing actually just rounds up when it displays it right here. So if I do the 1645 divided by 8, that's what it'll show. But in reality, this is actually what's saved in the game. There are 2 sets of 5 packagers that are doing the unpackaging over there. And those empty canisters come together in 2 different belts. So then they come down here. And then they feed 1/2 of these packagers. And then they continue their loop. I don't think there would have been anything wrong if they did end up kind of intermixing between the 2 systems. But it is nice to just be able to kind of split things up when you can. They just come up with some lifts, and this is obviously tall enough that I need to use the infinite lift height trick. And then, yeah, some really long belts that I'm going to have to try to make this not look too bad. But we'll leave that to future me. There is still some more stuff to do. Now that I have those in place, and I can kind of finish working on the rest of the logistics inside the factory. Now I'm going to go through and put this section to good use in the factory. Grouping up the AI limiters, bringing them up to the next floor to do the crystal oscillators. So most of it will be pretty straightforward and easy. Since most of that is just going from point A to point B, that's pretty simple. I don't think there's a whole lot of load balancing that I'm skipping over, but if there is, I'll make sure to show it off. And then I'm going to start working on the train logistics. The factory has a few new belts and a whole bunch of new lifts. Like I mentioned, for the most part, it's just taking things from one floor and then up to the next floor. Since this section needed the 2 floors, the output for all the time crystals from the first floor is coming up here, and then I just used a vertical merger to add everything from the second floor, and then they continue up to this one. This floor did have that little bit of load balancing. I'm making 800 dark matter crystals in total, but only 480 need to go upstairs. So here was the tiny bit of load balancing. Because if I group up 4 of them, that's 400. So then I can just take one of them, bring it over here to the middle, do a tiny bit of load balancing, send 80 of it that way, and then 20 of it goes back this way to group up with the other 300, and then that goes all the way downstairs. And then down here on the bottom floor is where we had a little bit more going on. So now I can delete this stuff because I am completely full of all my dark matter crystals that I need. And now we can turn off those, and eventually that'll get wired correctly. I left myself a note. I still need to go back down into the cave and set the correct amounts. I only need 2,961 instead of the 3,000 that would be coming out of here normally. To do that, I'll probably leave both of the pure nodes at 1200 and then just underclock the normal node that I don't need. And then those 3 will come over here and then come into my new 3 to 4 load balancer that I created. So I just made this one a blueprint. When 1.0 first came out, I realized that vertical mergers could make actual belt balancers a whole lot easier, and so I have an old video that goes through how to make these, and if I remember, I'll put a little card up at the top to link you to that if you want to see. But the methodology is very simple. Whatever your final output is, you want to create a single layer of a balancer of that. So at the end, I need 4 belts, so I need to be able to take 1 and split it into 4, which is a really easy one to do. And then what I need is to stack it 3 times. Now the vertical mergers make this a little awkward because normally when you stack these, all of these inputs are 2 meters away from each other. But when you're using the vertical mergers, Bean, you're like a pet walking in front of the camera. Just a little love tap. But with these vertical mergers, what you end up having to do is nudging things up 1 meter. And that's why they're spaced like that. Is now these gaps are 3 meters apart instead of the normal 2 that you would have. Which I actually don't mind the look of, it's just awkward to build. And so that's why I left these as 3 single meters so that I know that's the gap from here to get into the very first one. It's a 3 meter gap, which is 1 meter shorter than you normally do it. So for this, you just kind of have to manually do it. So it's a stubby lift, but it's actually 3 meters instead of the normal 2 that I shrink them down to. So you create the 1 to 4, and then you stack it for as many times as you have incoming belts. So that is how I create the 3 to 4. I can plug in 3 equal belts or 3 completely uneven belts, and I'll get 4 completely equal belts as an output. So that's how I take these 3 belts, and I create the 4 belts to go upstairs to the refineries. Still have a whole bunch of work to do, because now I need to plug in all of these different items. Except for this one. This one's the output, so I'm going to need to sync the 380 until I have plans for them down the line. For the 2 floors of converters, the easiest way to split those belts is to have 2 completely full belts of quartz, 1 to each floor, and then I need 8 belts of 800 coal each, and then that way 4 can go to each floor. Now that I have a lot of the in-factory stuff out of the way, I think it's time to start bringing in all the resources. Means I want to start with my trains. And unfortunately, I am kind of out of room over here, because I've kind of expanded about as far as I want to expand this way. To expand it anymore is just going to get really awkward. Now, I did mention one of the huge benefits to setting up all of my teleporters is now I have a free train station in all of these. Unfortunately, for this one, it only has 2 freight platforms and no extra space. This is definitely one of the train stations that I've learned my lesson, and I built this way too small. Which means inevitably, in the next playthrough, all my train stations are going to be way too big. But I think that's an easier problem to deal with. Now I have renamed this to Rocky Desert 0, since the rest of them start with 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now this one is 0. And because this is so small and it doesn't have any extra room to wait or anything like that, I think the best thing to do would be to pick the closest thing, and that way I'm not going to have an issue with throughput. This train station will deal with the plastic and the rubber. I still need to bring in 720 aluminum ingots, 897 quartz crystal, and 100 caterium ingots per minute. I do need a lot of coal, but I'm in the desert. There should be enough, right? Iron and copper is plentiful, and I only need 370 of each. So that one I'm not worried about, and I'll figure that out last. Currently, this train station is only being used by one train, and it's picking up the copper sheets. So it's really convenient when you have one train that's only picking up or dropping off, and then you can have another train do the opposite. And then you just have to make sure that the trains have the correct settings. So now I went to that electronics train and I made sure that it's only going to pick up copper sheets and it's not going to drop anything off here. 720 ingots per minute is actually a decent amount because they only stack to 100. Splitting it in half will give me plenty of time. Each of these freight platforms will only deal with 360 each. And those are just going to be coming from right up there. So they really don't have too far to go. Which pretty much only leaves this train station, and I don't think that's going to be enough to deal with all of that quartz and the Caterium. So instead, we're going up. Obviously, that means I'm going to have to add an actual roof on here, but that's okay because I didn't really want to leave it as just a plain flat roof. So now this gives me an excuse to add something on top. This is one of the few train stations where the logistics floor was built on top of this train station, and so now it's kind of sandwiched in between the two layers. I try to make the rail line as smooth as possible to get this to curve down and this not look too bad. So the incoming trains branch off from way back here. And then they're going to head up and then into this top floor. And then I figure it's really only enough space to put one long train here. I can still branch this off and I can put another probably 2 train stations over here. And then the outgoing line is going to be on this side. And then it comes back down and joins the main rail line. Now we're up to Rocky Desert 5. The first freight platform will deal with the 100 Caterium ingots. I need 897, which splits evenly into the 3 freight platforms, 299 in each one. So thankfully, if we just go downstairs, we've got the logistics floor. The downside, it's actually fairly busy already. I do have quite a bit of open space over here, and I think that's where I'm going to have to do most of my load balancing. The very first train is all the way on this side, and if I'm lucky, I can squeeze all of that in right here. But the rest of it, I'm going to bring over to here because I've got quite a bit more space to work with. My little belt highway to get all of those items from here to the factory is just going to come out on this side anyways. In hindsight, really didn't make this logistics floor big enough. It's only 2.5 foundations tall, so 10 meters. Probably should have made it taller. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and just build a few blueprints, and that way it's a little bit easier to place, especially in these tight quarters. As is another big advantage to making them blueprints is placing them, and if you're off by a meter or two, so much easier to delete the whole thing at once and replace it. Let me run through the ones that I've made. I couldn't fit all of them in the blueprinter, but most of them I could. Some of these I'll need the Mark III for, but thankfully I could do the 100 per minute with storage in just the Mark I. And hopefully I will remember to upload all of these onto my Google Drive. So we've got a Mark II belt, and then and I'm just now realizing I don't know why I placed a merger here. This part gets looped all the way back to the storage container, not into this merger. So I actually don't need that. I can redo this and make it a little bit shorter. So we've got 120 goes into a splitter. Here's 60 and here's 60. Split that 3 ways, 20, 20, and 20. There's the 20 that gets looped back to the storage container, leaving me with 100 out of this merger. Just adding extra mergers for no reason. Here is my 280 with storage for the plastic. We just barely need a Mark IV, but we've got 480 on this belt, into a splitter, 240 and 240, 120, 120, 40, 40, and 40. 40 plus the 240 gives me my 280. Group everything else, and it goes back into the storage container. For the other ones, I needed the big boy. And even with the Mark III, it didn't actually completely fit in here. Of course, I could have just made sure that I had belts in between all of these, and I could have pressed all of the splitters and mergers up next to each other. But unless I absolutely have to, I just rather not. I just like to make sure that everything is moving the way it's supposed to be. So with this, I made sure to leave myself a sign. This is the 220 that needs to loop back into the storage container. And so once I place the blueprint, I need to make sure that I actually connect that belt. So just like all the rest of these, I just make a diagram and then I just follow it. We start with a Mark V belt, so here's 780, and that goes into a merger. So it's actually going to be much easier to work with 800 than 780. So this is going to loop back 20. We'll have 800 on here, split it in half, 400, 400, 200, 200, 100, 100, and then that 100 is just going to go into a 5-way split. Because at this point, this has 500, so now I just need 60 to here. So that 100 after the 5-way split is going to turn into 120, split it in half. Here's my 60, so there's the 560. And then this splitter just needs to use all 3 outputs. So one of them needs to go back to this merger for the 5-way split. The other one is going to go all the way back to the beginning because there's the 20 to turn that 780 into 800. And then the last 20 gets grouped up with this 200, and this is getting sent back into the storage container. Easy peasy, right? The last one had enough space. This one did not. I guess I could have just not included the storage container, but I just made sure I had all the belts in here. And out of all of the ones I made, this is the one that I really needed to make a blueprint because I need 3 of these. This is going to load balance the 299 quartz crystals. Thankfully, the Mark IV belts are really easy to work with. That just goes straight into a splitter. We're going to split this in half over and over again until we get to this one where we're going to split it into thirds. So at this point, we've got 60 going into here. So we've got 20 on each of these. And then we're going to split that in half and then in half. And then once we are down to 5, we do a 5-way split. And that is how we end up with the 299. Just a few mergers and splitters. Now that I have them as blueprints, it's so much easier to maximize my space. So I can place one here, and now I don't have to worry about trying to figure out just enough space to put the next one. And just put it in blueprint mode, and wow, that's like perfect. So there's all 3 of the quartz. I just need to get the belts from that train station over to here. So once I figure out where I'm going to squeeze all of these into this logistics floor, then I'm going to create my little belt highway and take everything over to the factory, and I'll set up my sinks over here. So that way, once I get the trains actually running, I'll probably start with the plastic and rubber. That way, as soon as they show up, they'll do their load balance, they'll go on their little way, and then they can start sinking. And then in not too long, I should get a fairly accurate number for the throughput. Not too worried about the plastic and rubber. Quartz and the Caterium have a much longer journey. Let's go ahead and jump ahead to where we start loading up the trains. Back over at the West Coast. I knew it wouldn't be long until I came back. I have already extended it, and I have rubber and plastic number 6. And this is our new train. Because it has such a short distance, it can actually wait here for a couple minutes. We come down here, I can show you what I did to get those. As we can see, I've got the 2 full Mark VI belts, and then the 1 belt of 300 rubber. For the plastic, I just came up with this diagram. For this one, I was able to divide all the numbers by 40. So that 1200 becomes 30. And then I split it in half. So we've got 600 and 600. 200, 200, and 200. And then that 200 just goes into a 5-way split. So the 200 becomes 240. And now I've got my 280 and my 920. And then if I come over to here, I just was working with another 1200 belt. And this one, I actually didn't even need a diagram for. Because this is pretty simple. For this one, I could reduce that 1200 all the way down to 15. And the way it splits is 8 one way, 7 the other. So to do that, we just split it into thirds. So we've got 5, 5, and 5 15ths. And then with one of them, we just do a 5-way split. Goes from the merger to the splitter. The splitter splits off 3/5. So this right here is my 8 15ths. And then the other one goes to here. So one of them obviously has to loop back to the merger. And then the other 2 get grouped up with this 5 15ths. And so this one's the 7. So we've got 560 and 640. Next up, the aluminum factory that I didn't need to build quite yet. But hey, now I'm happy I have it. This area is going to be a logistics area, so eventually I'll probably cover it. But for now, it's pretty minimal, so I'm just going to leave it out in the open. If we come up through here, this is where this line is coming from. I deleted that sink, and this is where we're doing the load balancing, and then the excess is still being sunk. 720 out of the 1200 is 3/5. But because this is a full Mark 6 belt, I can't do the normal straight into a merger and loop back because then the belt wouldn't be able to handle it. So instead, you have to split it right away, and then it goes into a merger on either side. And then from there, it's pretty normal. You go from the merger to the splitter. This splits it in half. 3/5 one way, then the 2/5 and the part that loops back is on the other side. So I was able to come up with a fun little mirrored setup to get the 3/5 from either side merged together. So here we've got our 720, and there's the 480. And yes, I'm well aware I definitely could have just used the smart splitter, or even probably just a normal splitter, and split off the 480 belt. But where's the fun in that? This just looks cooler. And the last stop for this is the Eastern Dune Forest, where I made my very first aluminum factory. But that's not what I'm here for. That factory is the reason I came out here, because it is producing 125 quartz crystal per minute. Oh, I was wrong. It's 925. It's the silica that I'm making at a rate of 1125 for those. So I just made a quick little ratio split in the blueprinter so I could take the 925 and split it 897, and then the extra 28 that I don't need right now. Because as you can see, if we come down here, things are getting pretty crowded, and I just keep adding more and more. Having it as a blueprint made it a lot easier to find a spot where I could fit it in snugly and there's no clipping anywhere. So here is the 897 that I need, and the extra 28 just continues to get sunk. And then I did the same thing for the Caterium. I have 223, but I need to split that 123, which will continue to get sunk, and then the 100 that I need for this new train. So again, just made the diagram ahead of time, and then built it in the Blueprint Designer, and that way when I come down over here, it's a little bit easier to place, especially now that it's just so cramped in here. It's just way easier for me to build it outside in the Blueprint Designer, and then be able to just nudge it into the correct spot. So this is giving me my 100 Caterium ingots that I need. The quartz is then being split into the 3 different freight cars. The Caterium just needs the 1. And with this new train station, this one is pretty full. I don't think I really want to add a 3rd floor. So I'm really hoping I don't need to add any more trains out here. And now all the products arriving by train should be here. I'm obviously going to let this run for a while and make sure that there's no traffic issues and everything has pretty good throughput. But so far it looks like the load balancers are working. I've got my 897 quartz, 100 Caterium ingots. I didn't show the 360s because, well, that's pretty easy to do. So I've got my 720 aluminum ingots, and those I decided to have group up with the Caterium ingots because there's enough space, and that pushes it over the edge that now I need a Mark 6 for that belt, so that I can get over to the factory nice and quick. And then the plastic and rubber are on one belt, and they are coming from all the way over here. So if we follow these, here is the rubber, and the 280 plastic is meeting up here, and this is where they get grouped together. The rubber I was able to squeeze in just right here, and then the plastic was able to fit over here. Because I made them blueprints ahead of time, it really wasn't too bad just trying to find a spot, and then just figuring out where the lift and the belts can plug into. So really, it just looks way more chaotic down here than it is. No, I'm lying. It is pretty chaotic down here. I need to make the logistics area of my trains just bigger in the future. Another challenge to make this hopefully not look too bad, but we've got the 3 belts that are just going to come along this way. And for now, I'm just going to sink them right here. But when I'm ready to send them in the factory, I just delete those smart splitters and the sinks, and then they will make their way up this ramp and into the factory. Now I can deal with the copper, the iron, and the coal. The copper was the easiest one because, well, it's just right around the corner. So I just made a pretty short belt and lift. And here's the node. I need 370, so it is just more than what an impure node puts out. But thankfully, this one's a normal node. Now, the downside is, if we take a look at the map, as far as iron, I just kind of assumed that there must be an iron node close. But I've pretty much used all of the iron nodes up here. My closest iron node, I think, is either down here or way over there. This is actually where I started this series. And now there's nothing here. But I'm going to end up using one of these nodes. It is a pretty good distance, so I'm not sure if I really want to belt it that whole way. But I might have another solution, because as far as the coal goes, I need 6,400, which is a pretty good amount. So right here, I've got 2 normal nodes, so there's 1,200. Over here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more normal nodes, so there's another 2,400, so that brings me up to 36. I'm still, what, 2,800 short? I think the next closest coal is going to be right over here. This was the site of my major coal power plant that I ended up deleting because eventually I knew the 3 pure coal nodes were going to be much more valuable for something else. Months and months later, it is finally time to use those coal nodes. I am going to do some more skipping ahead so that this isn't too horribly long of a video. But for the coal nodes that are coming from over here, I think what I'm going to do is just try to make things easy on myself. If we come right over here, and I think if I can zoom in, there we go. There's one coal node, the other one is right there. I'll group those together because they'll both fit on one Mark 6 belt. And then those are going to make their way over here across this little land bridge. And then I'll have them meet up with this because I've already got 4 belts here. What's adding a 5th one? And that's how that belt of 1,200 coal will get into the factory. But the 4 normal coal nodes are just over here, so I'll get those grouped up into 2 belts. And then those will probably, it's not too bad of a journey. I'm just going to belt them over into the factory. The last bit that I need, the 3 pure nodes from all the way up there, that's a bit far for me to belt, I think. My first train station is already getting a little bit busy, and that's kind of awkward to take them all the way over there and then belt them over to the factory. What I would rather do is just build another train station, I think. This is just a nice little open area that I can build it on. That way I can have one train line go up to there and grab the 3 coal nodes. And even though it's a short trip, I'm probably going to need 2 freight platforms for each one of those nodes. A freight car can only hold 3,200, and if I'm trying to do 1,200 per minute, that means the maximum amount of time for a round trip is 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And keep in mind, the docking animation is pretty close to 30 seconds. So a whole minute of that is going to be taken up, just stopped at the train stations. Even though it's not a far distance, I'm not super confident it's going to be able to do that. So I'd rather split those up, which means it's going to need 6 freight cars. I think I'm just going to make this its own push-pull, and it's just going to go from here up to there and back. Since I'm already building a new train station, I might as well then build another line that goes to the other corner of the desert, because those iron nodes are all the way over there. And apparently a summer sloop that I haven't grabbed. How did I miss that? And we're back. Fast forwarded about 5 or so hours. Both the coal train that's coming in right here and the iron train are both up and running. I also needed to do a little bit of rerouting of the power, which came in handy. So now my new power tower locations are just on either side of the train station to kind of continue through, because I didn't want to completely disrupt those and rewire the whole area. So now those kind of connect underneath. And if we come inside, we can see we've got the 2 train stations. So the iron only needed 1. 370 iron ore that short of a distance. Only 1 freight car is needed. This one, like I mentioned, needed the 6, and it has no problem transporting that much. And here is that iron train. And if we just go upstairs, we can see the little logistics floor. The balancers for the coal, very simple, only doing 600. Just the Mark 5 belt, and then a Mark 1 and a Mark 2. Merge up 2 of the 600 lines, and I get my nice and even 1200. 370 takes a little bit more work, but it's not bad. All of these belts are just going to go on a very short journey right across here and into the factory. I got the copper turned on. The only ones that I haven't are the two farthest coal. So I still need to go turn on that one. There's still quite a bit of work to do. I need to do a lot of decorating still. So here is the little bit of load balancing that I really just wasn't quite sure how I was going to do. I'm making 2303 quartz right now. So if we divide that in half, that is how much is on both of these Mark 6 belts. And if I were to take, let's see, 1200 minus that amount, I really didn't have high confidence in just adding a merger and adding that onto there. I didn't think that it would merge up well. I've had the best luck and the least amount of issues when I have two 600 belts and you merge those together. That tends to work really well. So I guess first step, we need to come over to here, and here is the ridiculous load balancing I needed to come up with to take my 897 and split it between 800 and then 97 to go off this way. But like all the rest of them, I work out the problem ahead of time in excalidraw.com. I come up with the diagram, and then it's really easy to follow. On this belt, we've got our 97. The 97 gets split in half, which happens to be 48.5. So I have 48.5 go to each one of these, and then that 48.5 gets split in half. So when I said I had the best luck when I had two 600 belts and I merged those together, that's what I decided to do. So I've got the missing 48.5, and then that gets split in half. But this 1151 and a half or whatever it is, that gets split in half. And so this plus half of the 48 will give me a 600 line. That way I can create essentially 4 600 lines, combine those back up. So now I have my full 1200s. Those come along here, and then they enter this madness to then go to the appropriate floor. So thankfully, I decided to give myself so much room that this really wasn't too bad. There's a little bit of load balancing for the coal, but creating belts of 800, super easy when I have full 1200 belts incoming, because that's just 2/3. So if I'm collecting 2/3 here and 2/3 here, well, now I just combine those extra thirds. So basically just taking 2 belts and turning it into 3. And then for these other belts, I just need the one smart splitter so that I can split off the plastic one way and rubber the other way. And then same thing with the aluminum and the caterium. And then once I have them split off, then I just plug them up to the appropriate floor. This section looks way busier and way crazier than it really is. This right here was actually the easy part. But before I take an even longer break to do all of the real decorating and final touches, let me show you the new train stations. So the iron line just comes right down here, and then we stay just about at the tree level. And just a single lone train station over here. I have no idea if I'm going to use the other nodes around here, so instead of trying to plan for the future, I'm just going to build the one thing I need, and if I need to edit it, or just more likely just build something else separate later on, that's what I'll do. On the loading side, I just need one small storage container, and it's good to go. Very basic design when you only need one train station with one freight platform and one miner. Now the coal train has a much more fun journey to go on. So this one, it's a little bit higher than I wanted to start, but if we just head straight, this is where I needed to make a decision. Do I want to go around the outside, or do I just go through the tunnel? I realize this is probably going to be kind of sad, but I think these might be some of the first rail lines that I've ever laid not on foundations. And it really wasn't too bad to place them, and it was kind of fun. So these just make their way through this cave. And here's the train now. Because this area is still so steep, it was going to be hard to lift it up even more to then get it on top of foundations. So I just left it on the ground for a while until we get to this area. Once I started to make the curve, I thought this is probably a good spot to try to add in the actual platform and just put it as low to the ground as I could. And then we curve around here. This train station needed to be a little bit longer. Grabbing all 3,600 coal out of here, which is split between the 3 different lines, and then each one of those gets split in half so that each one of the freight platforms is getting 600 per minute. And it's back already. So nothing too fancy here, but I'm real happy with the way that this has turned out, and it's working great. I've got all the machines in place, belts and pipes where they need to go. All of the hard work is pretty much done. Well, most of the hard part. Sometimes with the decisions I've made, making it not look bad, that can be a challenge. The save is currently at 452 hours and 54 minutes. Let's see how long this takes me to attempt to not make this look too bad. Welcome back to my new Superposition Oscillator factory. The save is currently at 460 hours and 45 minutes. Just shy of 8 hours to do everything, and not too bad. Like I said earlier, this factory really dwarfs all the other ones in the area. Let's start the tour out here with the water extractors. There's a number of different ways I could have gone about feeding the canisters inside this loop. It took a little bit of trial and error to find just the right amount of empty canisters to put into the system, and I thought the easiest way would be just to throw 1,000 in each side, and then just see if it would be able to continue its loop or if there would be pauses on one side or the other as like all 1,000 kind of moved from one end to the other. Once you have just enough, then everything will be able to stay on just at a constant rate. So then I would just kind of add a couple hundred more. The canisters and packaged water just come right up here. And I decided to keep this just really simple, but hopefully it looks clean enough. I went with using the plain concrete and the pure white color for most of it, and then some asphalt for the supports. And to help kind of break things up, I just ran a painted beam along the side, and that was largely because along this side is where I ran the power. And so if you look closely in some of the spots, you can see the power line. And covering it with the beam just looks a little bit better in my opinion. For those of you good at math and were wondering why I was bringing in more coal than I needed, I decided to just downclock the 4 normal nodes that are coming from out there. So instead of each one outputting 600, they're only outputting 400. Now I realize I could have just saved myself one of the coal nodes and rebalanced 3 of them, but I don't think I'm going to run out of coal, and it was just easier to do it this way. So now I have 2 belts of 800. So these combined with the load balancing that I already showed earlier takes care of all of the coal. For this belt highway, I decided to use more of the pure white on coated concrete this time. This is bringing in everything from the train, and then the final product is also going to make its way to the train on the same path. And while I was at it, might as well add a hypertube. It definitely doesn't quite fit in the theme with all the other belt highways that I've built in the area, but I like it, so I'm going to keep it. These are all still syncing right here, so when I'm ready, I'm just going to delete all this stuff, and then they will flow up here into the factory. The hypertube brings me up to the real floor of the factory, but I have a normal entrance out here in the front, so just some stairs added to the side here. But before we go inside, I'll show you the rest of this. So these are all just faked. I made this a giant blueprint, and I made a whole bunch of small sections so that this would show up more often than it normally would. And then once I had all of these placed, then I just added a converter and let it fill up with the excited photonic matter. And so now there's excited photonic matter in all of these, and it's just for the looks. But against the coated concrete, it looks so cool. And look at it at night. The way the Mark 6 lifts light up with the excited photonic matter, I just think is really cool. I decided to make the corners just extra thick, more than I normally do, so these are all 2 foundations thick instead of 1. I just wanted that extra depth, and I thought the easiest way to do all of this, because this one I didn't mind making it look somewhat like an office building again. I wanted something that would plug onto where each of the foundations are, and then I could fill in the gaps with just the full windows. This is just using some of the inverted ramps and the normal ramps, some small billboards, and then the large fans. I started off with this design, but I realized I didn't really want it to be the same on all 4 sides. The 2 big sides would be fine, but that is why I came up with this for the other 2 sides, because I just didn't want it to look the same all the way around. Not all of them, but a lot of the factories in the area kind of have this pointed roof or kind of close to it. So I decided to try to keep the same thing with this one, although I'm not sure if I want to keep it this way. I mean, I probably will at this point, but normally I try to leave it more or less open because of the quantum encoders. But I think it might actually look cool to have the beams shooting through this roof. You'll have to let me know what you think. Now, let's go ahead and take a trip inside. I thought it would be nice to have signs on both sides. So now I've got the two 1200s and I've downclocked the normal node, so it's only at 561. So I had the exact amount of raw quartz that I need. I figured it would just be easiest just to leave the reanimated SAM going, and for now it's just headed over to here, to the one sink that's staying here. This is going to deal with the reanimated SAM, and once my storage containers fill up, it'll deal with the overflow for the storage. The only reason it looks busier than it was before is because of all the sinks in here. Other than that, not too much has changed besides adding some glass walkway all the way around, some stairs and walkways to get up and over all the belts, and then all the way in the back corner is my elevator. Not the most conveniently placed for where the entrance is, but it was the most convenient place for inside the factory. As far as the decorations for inside the factory go, I'll be honest, they're kind of lacking. I really thought about going through and adding some sort of light fixture to all the floors, but I don't really like the normal lights, and that meant that I was just going to add a ton of signs to all of the floors because it's a decent sized factory, and so I just decided not to. For the most part, I've just got my elevator here in the corner, and then I've got my glass walkways with some frame walls, and then some beams along the corner, because I didn't really want to do the railing or the barriers, and the beam is just different enough. You can still see over it, and it will stop you most of the time, I think. But when you rotate the beams, the corners are a little bit weird because the normal kind of beam connectors just don't quite look right, blending these two together. So I just added some of the small metal pillars. And we've got lots of windows so we can take a look and see the rest of our world. And like with most of my recent factories, I decided to just run all of the power along the floor using the beams. I do hope that at some point we get some additional options for lighting, or maybe fix the current actual lighting, because it would be really nice to actually add ceiling lights. I just wish they worked differently. Since most of the floors are going to look fairly similar, let's go ahead and just get this started, and you can see it at the same time as the machines come to life. I already have the correct amount of canisters in that loop, so I don't have to do anything, and I think it'll be pretty obvious that it works. For the startup process, I'm just going to send everything all in at once. May mean I have to pull out a few extra stacks of materials here and there, but it'll be the easiest way to start it. Start with the outside ones here. And now let's head inside. It's a good thing you can select so many things at once. 47. And hopefully I didn't select something I didn't mean to. Let's see how long it takes to make these superposition oscillators. Because the crystal oscillators needed the AI limiters, and those were going to take a little while to manufacture and then head all the way up here, I decided to just sink both the rubber and the quartz crystal for right now until the AI limiters got close enough, and now we're going to go ahead and send them in. Now that the crystal oscillators are showing up here and almost up to full speed, I can go back down to the floor right below this. Since I've got 400 time crystals per minute, all of these machines would have filled up really quickly if I weren't syncing them right now. But now I can go ahead and send them in. With that, I'm just going to switch this back to a normal splitter and go ahead and delete the sink. I want to make sure that these make it into the machines first, and then I'm going to turn on the top floor. And that way, as soon as the dark matter residue gets created and sent down these pipes, it'll start getting dealt with. Now I can do the same thing and turn the smart splitter back into a regular splitter, and let's send in the aluminum sheets. And here they come. Oh, I finally have them automated. No more temporary setups for superposition oscillators. And we've already got the dark matter crystals showing up. And just like that, I've got my 80 superposition oscillators. And the dark matter crystals are up to the 480 that I need to keep this thing consistent. If I check one of these machines, yeah, it used more than half of the full stack. So now it should stay pretty even right in between 71 and 77. Perfect. And if we come back down to this floor, we can see all of those chrome pipes glowing with the dark matter residue. Ah, looks good. Load balancing is working like a charm. And I'm sending 320 of the dark matter crystals downstairs. Down here on the very first of the actual factory floors. Oh, and I've just filled up the storage container and the dimensional depot. The 320 dark matter residue are just heading downstairs to the sink now. This container will take a little bit longer. I only have 6 being sent to my storage. The dark matter crystals come up, then they go up, they go through storage, and then the overflow comes back down and then into the sink. And it merges up with the overflow for the superposition oscillators. But those 6 superposition oscillators needed to do just a little bit of load balancing. So this is my way to take it from 8 and split off the 6. 6 go to storage. The other 74 head on their way. They just head out the factory along the Belt Highway all the way to the train station. And they're just being sunk over there for now. But they're nice and close by and ready for me to put on a train for whatever project I have next. That is going to do it for this one. I know this was a super long one. I thought the portals and the third plastic and rubber factory would be too short, but cramming in the superposition oscillators might have made it a bit too long. Feel free to let me know if you think I should have split this up. Thank you so much for being here, and a special thank you to everyone that likes, comments, and hypes the videos. It really does help. The next project is to stop having to make temporary power shard setups, and now that I have superposition oscillators automated, I can use some of those and the power shards to make the alien power matrices. Matrices? So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.